everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly of Nonverbal Communication. Nonverbal communication, this is our hand gestures, this is our facial expressions, this is our eye contact, this is including our voice, the quality of our voice. And what we don't know is that the nonverbal communication is really important. And so if there's anything that I can do to reduce any distractions, any inappropriate gestures, anything that dilutes your ability to have impact with your audience, then that straight away is going to elevate you as a speaker, as a facilitator, as a trainer. They did some research in Stanford University where they had two groups of people, and Group A, Group B. Group A, the speaker spoke to them telling the truth with good nonverbal communication. They believed him, they trusted him. Group B told the same truth with non-congruent, non-appropriate nonverbal communication, and they did not believe him, they did not trust him, they did not buy his message. Same message to both groups. Group A told the truth with congruent nonverbal communication, they believed him. Group B, same truth with non-congruent nonverbal communication, and they did not believe him. So here's the challenge to you. Do you know what your nonverbal communication says about you when you walk into a meeting? When you walk into a job interview? Could some of your nonverbal communication skills accidentally be white-anting or detracting your ability to be influential and get your message across? No one would want that to happen. So today I'm going to touch on some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of nonverbal communication in the hope that you will be more effective and more confident with your nonverbal communication every time you speak. All right, let's get underway. Good, the bad, the ugly of nonverbal communication. So Peter Jew's my name, public speaking trainer and coach. My passion is to help you be more effective, more confident, more influential every time that you stand up and speak. How to participate? I know that some of you've been on my webinars before. Ask questions, take notes, participate, think. By thinking, I mean, what could you do differently the next time you present? So let's say you've got a seminar coming up in the future. Are you going to change anything as a result of what we learned today? The worst thing that could happen would be for you to spend half an hour and say, wow, that's really powerful, and then not do anything about it. So I always ask you to think of what you're going to do as a result moving forward of this workshop today. Let's get away. Stance. Please avoid those, the passive stances, the shy stances. These are what we call the fig leaves. These are the dropping the shoulders and looking small. These are the crunching up the diaphragms. Even the reverse fig leaf with our hands behind our back, we can look really, really small. And to a lesser extent, more so women than men, if we cross our legs over, as this particular gentleman has, crossing our legs over, once again, looking even smaller. The fig leaf is hands down around your crotch region. It's seen as shy, it's seen as passive. It's also seen as, I don't want to be here. And it may be perceived as being nervous. So straight away, just by lifting your hands parallel around your midriff, you're going to look more confident and more effective when you stand up to speak. Of course, the reverse of passive stances is aggressive stances. Hands on hips like this, and then take a wide stance, and you can be seen as quite aggressive. If I was the trainer and I was speaking or leading a group, and this was my predominant gesture, once again, I might be seen as aggressive. So avoid the soft passive stances. Avoid those aggressive stances and try and be more credible and more confident in your stance. So a neutral and credible stance is, as I mentioned, around your midriff. The lady on the left on my screen, she's got one hand up, she's got the pen in the other, she's smiling, she's looking at people. The person to my right, his hands are around his midriff. They're not down around his crotch, around the fig leaf. His shoulders are, nice and wide, and that allows good deep breathing as well. So just your stance can make a big difference in terms of how people perceive you and how your credibility and your confidence also looks. For those of you who like TED Talks, feel free to look at a TED Talk by a lady by the name Amy Cuddy. I've just typed that on the screen for you. Amy Cuddy, her TED Talk talks about your nonverbal communication determines who you are. And she talks about walking on and being credible and faking it till you become it. So you can be really nervous inside, but your body language can look confident. The way you stand, the way you hold your hands, the way you breathe low. So do you know what your body language says about you when you walk on stage? Are you looking passive? Are you looking aggressive? Or are you looking confident and neutral? Avoid standing behind the lectern. Public speaking is scary stuff. And some people stand behind the lectern because it gives a bit of a protection between me, the speaker, and the audience on the other side. I would rather remove any barriers, take them away, and just be present 100%. So that means you're going to be able to see, my bald head, my big nose, my big ears, well, not with headsets on, but my pimples, my warts, my imperfections. I've got nothing to hide behind. And of course, this particular gentleman here is doing a thing that we call lectern lean. And that's leaning on the lectern. And I don't know if he's grasping hard enough, but some people grasp really hard. And we get this thing that you call white knuckle fever, where you hang on to the lectern so tight that your knuckles turn white. That slouch also stops you from presenting. If I was going to stand behind a lectern, I think that posture looks reasonably well there. The hands are still hidden behind the lectern. I assume that she has the ability to bring her hands above the lectern to gesture. And I would much rather remove any barriers and stand in front of the group of people with nothing before us. So I avoid standing behind the lectern. It puts a barrier between you and your audience. Gestures, make sure they're purposeful and congruent. They're aligned with what you're saying. So what do I mean with that? I mean that sometimes you bring things together. Sometimes you layer the learning as you add more material. Maybe you've got 2 or 3 ideas you want to share with people. And sometimes you need to urge caution, and sometimes you want to bring people on a journey with you. You're doing your Q&A session. Thanks for your question. Lets that person know I'm finished with them and their question. Does that answer your question? Lets them know that I'm happy for them to come back and have another look, a second chance at expanding on that question. Sometimes I need to connect different ideas together. So these are purposeful and congruent gestures. So they're congruent, meaning they're aligned, they're parallel to the words coming out of your mouth. Yours truly there, showing a variety of gestures. Avoid, we're still with gestures here, avoid those bouncy gestures that bounce up and down in time with the words that I am saying. You are not conducting an orchestra. So that's the bouncy gesture. Even if it's not pointing or it's not like this gesture, it might be this gesture, or maybe you even do your fist. The up and down might be seen as passion and enthusiasm, but when it continues and every time you gesture, you bounce and then you move on from the passion, it is what we call visual noise. Gestures that don't mean anything, you know, the rubbing of the hands, the genie out of the bottle. Repetitive gestures. Thanks for coming. That's a nice gesture. Thanks for coming. Lovely. Welcome. Welcome. Yep. Now I want to share with you 5 strategies to be more effective and more influential in your presentation and what you can do should your mind go blank. And as I move on, this welcome gesture is no longer relevant, but I'm still using that same repetitive gesture because I'm locked in a time warp and I'm just going round and round and round. So what started out as a really nice welcome now becomes noise because I'm just going round and round. The same gesture all the time doesn't make it a good gesture. And something that I would encourage you all to do would be to avoid the pointing. Around the world, people are sick and tired of saying it's your fault. I'm going to blame the people in the room, which is what the point says. And if I have a question from the room, I don't say, yes, yes, what do you think? I would go with a, yes, what would you like? I'd like your comment. Does anyone else want to add? Yes, Peter, what do you think? So it's a flat, welcoming gesture as opposed to pointing down the barrel. I read some research where female audience members in particular are sick and tired of men who point at the audience, who point at them. So please, I would suggest eliminate the pointing. If you need a directional gesture, yes, what do you think down the back? And I'd welcome your comment as well. More of a welcoming directional gesture than the point. Any comments on gestures at the moment? I guess my call to action in all of my workshops would be for each of you to grow your gestural vocabulary. Have a richness of gestures. These can add so much to what you're saying. And there's more than just palms up and palms down. You know, there's a whole range of things. There's that linking of ideas. Yeah, that's thinking outside the box, the connections that we sometimes find. There's a whole range of rich gestures that should come out spontaneously as you speak, but are aligned and parallel with the words. This is you just growing your gestural vocabulary. And of course, remember the resting position. So when I'm finished gesturing, no more gestures required. I'll just bring my hands back parallel in a credible and confident position as opposed to a closed or an aggressive or that sort of the shy passive gesture. So it's about gesturing, but you don't have to gesture all the time. And how do you rest your hands when you're finished? Platform. This is the stage, this is the space, this is the front of the room. I've just come back from doing some work in the mining sector, and it's a small training room, and I call that the platform. It's not raised. It's not a stage. There's no microphone. I'm in front of 15 people. It's still your space. So claim it and use it effectively. So please avoid what I call a dance. So there's that little Irish jig where someone goes, someone walks back and forward and back and forward. It's sort of continuously. The other one I see is someone walks forward and they walk to the side and then they take a step back and they take a step to the side, and then they take a step forward and they take a step across, then they take a step back. This one's called the square dance. So this one's the Irish jig and this one is the square dance. I would rather settle and stand on my 2 feet nice and comfortable and then move for purpose. Move to engage a different part of the audience. Move to use a flip chart on one side or maybe a whiteboard on the other side. And the other thing we have is just that pacing. And as well as the dance or the distracting movement on stage, there's the side-to-side platform. And we have a name for that, as I have a name for most little things. And that is called the cat on the hot tin roof. So the cat on the hot tin roof is someone who paces right across the stage and comes immediately back, and then goes across again and keeps going back and loops back on themselves. And they're an incessant pacer, an incessant walker. Cat on the hot tin roof is what we describe that as. So feet down, nice and centered. You can swivel your hips, so I can talk to people on the far left. I can talk to people on the far right. I can talk to people way up the back of the auditorium, and I can engage those down the front without needing to move. But I do move for purpose to one side of the room, and I'll do something on a whiteboard or a flip chart. I'll move to the other side of the room and settle, and then I'll engage another part of the audience. When you move for purpose, I would always move and then I'd settle those 2 feet down and angle towards the audience, the whole audience, and I'd stay there probably for 1-2 minutes, and then I might move somewhere else, maybe to the middle of the room, and then I'd settle down again for another 1 to 2 minutes and engage a different part of the room. But even while I'm there, I'll still swivel and look at everyone in the room at some stage within that 2 minutes. And then I might have a flip chart on the other side. So I'd move over and resettle. Another time, of course, when you may need to move is if you've got a PowerPoint behind you. So you'll move to one side so everyone can see the PowerPoint, and you'll settle and you'll even look at the PowerPoint yourself. Avoid the cat on the hot tin roof. It is really distracting. And the one that I know that I experienced was Sir Bob Geldof was speaking in Perth, and he walked back and forth on that stage for 90 minutes so repetitively that I do not remember much of what he said. The pacing was almost constant, and I've worked out how Sir Bob Geldof remains so skinny. That is his daily exercise, or could be perceived as his daily exercise. Distracting to visual learners, settle, put those feet down, swivel the hips, and you can have impact. So, any questions? So eye contact is also really important. We say that it's the window of the souls. It's how we build trust. It's how we connect with our audiences. I think the thing to avoid is glancing out the window and speaking to the audience outside, or spending too much speaking to the roof. I know when we recall something or we're trying to find an answer, we may go to the roof. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Our eyes may go up. And recall yourself, what was it like going to university, Peter, as a person who stutters, and my eyes go down? As a speaker, where possible, make eye contact with your audience. And so my personal philosophy is that my lips do not move unless I'm looking at someone. Unless looking at someone in the audience. That means I'm having mini conversations, one person at a time. Then I'll move to someone else and I'll have a mini conversation, 4 to 5 seconds. Then I'll move to someone else and I'll make eye contact with another 4 to 5 seconds. Probably more than 5 seconds is a little bit intense, maybe a little bit creepy. And if you only do that fleeting 1 to 2 seconds, it's kind of not real. So eye contact, really important. And I like to talk about genuine eye contact. So I look at an individual and I speak to them. One person in a room of 100 people, 200 people, one person. I'll look at them and I'll speak to them for 4 or 5 seconds. Then I'll move up the back and I'll pick one person out and I'll speak to them for that 4 to 5 seconds. Then I might go across the room and speak to them for 4 to 5 seconds. Then I'll come diagonally back, stopping in the middle of the room and speak to someone, randomly picking out individuals that kind of map out the majority of the room and speak to that one person. I don't look above their heads. I don't sort of pick out a group of 3 to 4 and speak to that group of 3 to 4 individuals, one-on-one. But here's the thing, when you get in those bigger groups of 50, 100, 250 people, when I pick out one person, so Jimmy, when I speak to you, the 5 people that are sitting around you, the immediate 5 people think that I'm speaking at them. And then when I move down to the front and I speak to one person, the 2 or 3 people around them think I'm making eye contact with them as well. So this is genuine eye contact. This is not scanning. Some people make the mistake, the good, the bad, the ugly, of doing lighthouse eye contact. And that means they start at one side of the room and they gradually scan across. And then, as you know, with lighthouses, then they go back systematically. And I guess in a room with depth, you'd then drop your eyes down another row and then you'd scan along that row, making superficial, artificial eye contact, and you drop it down. This is genuine, real eye contact. Chatting to the people in the room so they feel like Peter is having a chat with them. Your voice is part of your non-verbal vocabulary, and pauses are so important. Pauses eliminate those filler words and extraneous words. Filler words, you know, yep, actually, like, yeah, nah. So extraneous words, obviously, basically, actually. Basically, what we have here is a miscommunication that basically means we're not getting the outcomes we want. And basically moving forward, I want all of you to basically take this on board so this never happens again, basically. Obviously, what we have here is a miscommunication, and obviously I'm not happy with this. So what I want you all to do, obviously, is to go back and read your code of conduct manual. So obviously we never have these miscommunications again, obviously. They can be auditory tics, auditory noise to the person who learns by listening very carefully. And those filler words become distracting. The other filler noise that may not be voice, but would be considered nonverbal, would be the clicking of the pen, and the visual distraction would be the juggling of the pen. And of course, I need glasses to read, not to see, not to go about my everyday business. And sometimes we see the twirling of the glasses. Distractions, especially for visual learners, ums, ahs, filler words, distracting, especially for auditory learners. Staying with the voice. Breathe. Learn to relax and learn to deep breathe rather than shallow breathe up here. Shallow breathe is a nervous breathe. If your shoulders are rising up and down, you're breathing in the upper reaches of your lungs and you're neglecting this deeper diaphragmatic breathing down here. And don't be afraid to warm your voice up. Most people I speak to who play sport, squash, go for a run, go to the gym, do their warm-ups before they do the vigorous exercise. Think of public speaking as vigorous exercise. You're using thousands of complex muscles and sinews and cartilages to create voice. And the vocal folds are flapping and it's being shaped by the mouth and the lips. Very complex. Why would you not warm that up before going on stage? Would that be tongue twisters? Would that be humming? The newsreaders that you see on ABC, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10 will do warm-ups. Drink water. And the last part of your voice, be aware of your pace, your volume, the pitch, and feel free to change it. As the excitement builds, you can speed up. Use pause and sometimes slow down if you need to be more deliberate. And the volume you can increase, and you can also whisper. I've just done workshops in the Pilbara in a mining sector, and when people do group work and I want them back, I whisper. So now if you're almost finished. And they all look at me and they stop talking. They look at me. What's going on here? What's he doing? But I've got them back. I've got their attention. So pace, volume, and the pitch, the intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. Australians, men, tend to be nasal, monotone speakers at a very sort of boring type tone, a very boring type pitch. And this is me often because I do have hay fever. So if that is your natural trait, your natural voice, remember, you can change the volume. You can speed up when you need to and be more deliberate, slow down, even with that nasal quality voice that I have. In summary, stance. Don't be aggressive, don't be passive. Gestures, meaningful, congruent, aligned. Avoid distracting gestures. Platform, Nice and still, great presence. Avoid cat on the hot tin roof. Avoid the square dance or the little Irish jig. Eyes, genuine contact, and voice. Change the pace, change the volume. What's coming up in January? The eyes have it, the importance of eye contact when public speaking. I've spoken just a little bit about eye contact, and I mentioned genuine eye contact. This webinar is going to take you into some deep understanding of eye contact as a non-verbal. And then 24th of January, 10 statistics around public speaking that I think everyone should know that'll help you be more effective. For example, 75% of the world's population suffer from glossophobia. Glossophobia is a complex word for fear of public speaking. But hang on a moment, Peter, did you say 75%? Yes, I did. But isn't that amazing? Doesn't that mean that everyone or the majority gets nervous? What other statistics can you use to help you be more comfortable? Workshops, one in Melbourne, 1st of February, thinking and speaking off the cuff. Port Hedland, 17th of February, thinking and speaking off the cuff. Happy to schedule some workshops in Perth. If anyone wants them, do let me know. So Peter Jew's my name, public speaking trainer and coach. Any comments would be welcome. Feel free to send me a message. But what are you going to do? What have you learnt? How are you going to grow your gesture vocabulary? Do you stand well, or are you a distractor? Are your gestures aligned with what's coming out of your mouth? Do you need to grow your gestural vocabulary? Are you a pacer or dancer? What does your eye contact do? And what can you do to improve the quality of your voice? This is Peter Jew, wishing you well. Christmas, festive season, New Year, and of course your public speaking journey. Bye for now.